Good evening. This is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for August 26, 2013. Tonight we have two matters before us. I'd like to remind everyone, if you plan on speaking on behalf of either of these petitions, that you please sign in at the podium before addressing the board. First matter before us is under continuances. This is ZB 2013-21. It's a special permit. The applicant is Marcia Hebert. The property is located at 246 University Avenue. And the petition is to add additional paved area for a driveway without maintaining usable open space requirements pursuant to section 4.5.3 and 5.3.2 of the zoning ordinance. Good evening, Mr. Maloney. You want to address us? So I guess the last time you were here, you ended up meeting with DPD, and I know we received a new set of plans. We received your write-up, but so if you want to just kind of walk us through what's happened since the last meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, as you know, we were here on July 22nd, and we had submitted a plan to the board that involved the paving of the balance of the property. And the board, I think, had some recommendations as to changing and modifying the plan. So subsequent to that meeting and subsequent also to the recommendations of the board that we perhaps meet with the engineer's office and the planning department office, we did in fact meet with them 2 Mondays ago. And we put together a plan. We modified our plan with the agreement of the engineer's office as well as the planning department to pave just 369 square feet of the balance of the lot. So just to increase the paving for parking, off-street parking, to 369 square feet, thereby leaving quite a bit of property, and I think it's about in the area of 456 square feet of open space, permeable area, area that can be used for drainage. And we also agreed with the engineer's office and the planning department that the paving that's done will be pitched in such a manner that it will create a runoff towards the back open space of the lot, which I think that the board was concerned about at our last meeting. So we have also proposed that the balance of the lot be gravelled, and so that it's a permeable area and that the runoff is capable of going through that system and without affecting unduly anyway the city's drainage system. So we think that this is a good plan. It does create 3 additional spots, at least for the tenants, and I think I expressed to you that there's a great need in that neighborhood and for this property in particular to have parking, off-street parking for the tenants and to relieve some of the congestion on-street parking, in that area. So we think this meets the best of both worlds. To be honest, we tried to work with the engineer's office as well as the planning department and to consider the recommendations of members of the board. So we'd ask the board to approve this plan as designed. In particular, we're very concerned that we'd like to have that permeable area be gravel or crushed stone so that it's a little easier to maintain. And also that it'll easily meet the drainage requirements. So that's the proposal. I have submitted to the board the revised plan. That's dated 2 weeks ago from the surveyor, and we would ask the board to approve that as written.
Yeah, so the revision was on August 12th. So we'll use that as the new submitted plan. Revised, revised August 12th, 2013.
That's correct. And that was as a result of, again, the meeting we had with the city departments.
Yep. Just so I'm clear, how many new spots would be created?
Well, the owner has 5 spots.
Yeah.
Ordinarily. I mean, you can probably fit an additional spot in there from time to time, but it's usually maxed out at 5 spots. Yeah. But sometimes you can get a 6th spot in there as it is now. But so this new paving will create, she thinks, 3 to 4 additional spots, because there's a piece of one spot that you can see on the plan, the one to the right, that is partly going to be used for the existing pavement. So the existing pavement and a portion of the new pavement would create a third spot, which would be very advantageous to parking for the tenants as well as the commercial customers.
Right, because I thought I heard you were adding 3, but if I look at the plan, if we can just take a look at the plan for a second, looks like you have numbers 8 and 9. I see those as 2 spots, correct?
Well, actually, the dotted line would be through the middle of another lot. That's not numbered.
Okay.
But the 2 full lots coming out of the new paving would be 8 and 9 as shown in the plan.
So there would be no parking on the gravel area, is that correct?
Well, I don't know. I think that that's possibly...
You don't show it, that's why I guess I wanted to ask the
Yeah,
question.
and I don't think it would be prohibited, and perhaps it might be useful, but there's no plan to pave it.
Yep.
And I think it would be a lot easier to maintain than having little strips of grass in there, and so that's why we, in addition to in consult with the engineer's office. And
I was
the
just
planning
curious
department.
when you said 3, if 3 represented maybe 1 being in the gravelled area, but I wasn't
No,
sure.
no.
Okay.
That's only because of that dotted line going through the lot to the right of Lot 8, or the spot Lot 8. So
The new, I'll call it where the new paving's going to be for numbers 8 and 9, will those be lined to designate that?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No. I don't think that would be necessary.
Because I think I asked at the last meeting, the existing parking that runs along Fifth Avenue there was not, you guys weren't going to do any new restriping there, correct?
I don't believe that's necessary. I
Okay.
think she can,
All right.
she has longtime customers there, and
Yep.
the tenants will know where to park. And
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to ask because you have them almost blocked out as though they're designated spots, so.
Yep.
And when you say parking spots for 8 and 9 for tenants only, how will that be designated? Is there any type of sign that says resident parking or tenant parking only?
I think she would like to try it without,
Okay.
and see if that's enforceable.
Yeah.
I think it would be enforceable. I think the
Right.
tenants recognize what's available for the commercial customers, and I think that the commercial customers will probably recognize that as being for the tenants as well. If it requires a sign, if she needs that to manage the property, she'll certainly put one up.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want it to be a requirement.
Yep.
Sometimes too many signs can have an
Sure.
adverse effect.
Yep. I didn't see anything on here, I just wanted to ask the question. Because I think we kind of discussed that also about jockeying around for spots, or I guess we'll let the site manage that on their own, correct?
Yes, and I think that the gist of this petition is to be able to repave an additional area on the property. And we've managed to get that down to 369 square feet. We've also managed to show, as you can see, the buffer abutting the adjoining property owner. There's a 3-foot buffer, which I think that the committee had expressed an interest in showing on the plan. So we've done that. And we have pretty close to 18 feet, 19 feet in the back area for the drainage, which is significant, and I think also is consistent with what the board was looking at.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the public at this point. Anyone here that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor?
Thank you for your patience. I don't write very fast. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak here this evening. For the record, my name is Rita Mercia, 221 Burnham Road, Lowell, Mass. And I come before you in no other capacity other than a resident of the city of Lowell. I thank you for your service to the city and know that decisions are never easy. I do not know Marcia Hebert as well as I know her mother, but I will say that this is a good family with strong values and an honest perspective of life. I do know that she is present here this evening to return her parking lot back to the way it was over 40 years ago. I heard that there was compromise here. She's not setting a precedent here tonight, in my opinion. She is merely asking for your help and support to return the parking lot to the way that it was before she cut out a portion to make a safe place for her dog. Now, if we're all animal lovers, we can't have the attitude that she created the problem, she's stuck with it. In my opinion, she created the situation for the love of an animal, and if you know anybody that loves animals, they're good people. I love animals myself, so I can relate to that. I think I would have done the same. She no longer has the need to use it as such. And as we know, the density in the neighborhood of the streets in the vicinity of UMass Lowell, where numerous students live, is quite essential to get cars off the road. So what we have here is a woman who wants to return the parking lot back to the way that it existed over 40 years and revive a few spaces that were previously there and keep the cars off the street. It sounds pretty right to me. Although I know that laws change and get stricter, this woman has gone through hoops to seek a variance to make things fair. I don't know why we have variances in place for if we can't call upon them from time to time. Things aren't always black and white. There are many gray areas where we apply for a variance and make things fair. And I know that this board is trying to do that. I believe this is one of those times. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open up to the board. Dennis.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of questions, but I do think this is a great compromise. I really think this plan does a lot to restore the drainage requirement that we're looking to have in the city for existing residential lots. The use of gravel versus grass, I just want to try to explore that a little bit more, because I think as an ideal scenario, a lovely grass lawn or a landscaped area with some shrubs or trees would be icing on the cake. But I understand gravel is very practical and it can be overflow parking and does all we need to do for drainage and is low maintenance. Is that kind of the story here? We're looking at gravel for the practicality of it?
Yes, very much so.
Yep.
And we talked about this with the engineer's office, and I think the gravel would be considered to be more permeable than grass. So we think it works on every level. So we would really like to have that be part of this plan.
Can you describe the gravel that you're putting down? Is there any kind of weed fabric that's being put down first to control any?
I think that that would probably be done. I don't really know the details as to the mechanics of the gravel, how it's going to be installed. I know that she's consulted with a contractor, but it's going to be sufficient to have very good drainage, and I would think it would make sense to have something underneath the gravel to prevent the weeds from coming up, for appearance purposes.
And then the depth of the gravel, do we know if it's 3 inches deep or 6 inches deep? Do we know?
I don't really know, but perhaps the engineer's office is going to tell us how deep it has to be and how it's supposed to look.
I just want to follow through on the whole practicality idea, that it doesn't become a weed-filled, gravel, muddy kind of scenario, that it stays as a nice, clean, neat kind of gravel.
And Ms. Hebert is definitely on the same page.
Yep.
As far as that goes.
Very good. I have no further questions. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Kevin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have no additional questions other than a comment, just the appreciation of working with DPD. I know going back and forth sometimes can be nuisance and takes a little more time, but I appreciate the compromise to meet in the middle there with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no particular comments or questions. I do appreciate the petitioner's patience in working with DPD, coming up with an alternative plan, getting the spots petitioner's looking for, I think, is well-suited, particularly for the tightness and the extreme rarity of parking in that area. Finding the need for two tenants, and as it relates to the gravel, I think it's multi-purpose, as long as it's permeable, and the depth is according to at least 3 inches. With a weed block, I think is fair. I've done it, so I think it's not a hardship at all. I think it'll work out well. So I do appreciate your package and intention in working with the department, so thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Corey?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I think, Counselor, you and your applicant certainly did your due diligence on this. You know, a month ago, it was looked a little difficult, but, you know, it was me that recommended that we continue this for a month and work with engineer's office, and looks like everybody did their part, and we have an outstanding compromise right here in front of us tonight. So, outstanding. I think it's a great win-win for the neighborhood. In this neighborhood in particular, you know, I'm all about parking. Every petition is different in the city. But in this particular case, I want to see parking on, it's University Ave, it's a college neighborhood, and parking is paramount, in my opinion. So I think it's great. Thank you for working with the engineer's office, and I support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the applicant for the compromise. I think these are a great set of plans, so, and thank you for taking the recommendations of the board and of the city. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Van. I guess I'll follow up with Dennis's question around the gravel. Joe, were you in the meetings with the petitioner or somebody else?
Yes, I was in those meetings with the petitioner and engineer.
Was there any discussion around gravel depth, which, to Dennis's point, which would...
Yeah, not that I recall. The depth wasn't covered during the meeting, but it would probably be something that's covered pretty standardly during the paving permit process. Because each application that is for either a new driveway or expanding a driveway has to get a paving permit through the engineering office. So that's something that's generally covered during that process.
Okay, so it sounds like during the permitting process for the driveway, they'll determine the, I guess I'll call it the depth of the gravel. So I don't think
We'd expect that, and she intends to do a first-class job on it
Sure.
anyway,
Yeah.
and something that's built to last as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking more around if we had to condition it around X amount of inches, but if it's going to be handled through the driveway permit, that's fine. Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I don't believe the gravel in the green space is going to be something handled. I think the gravel below the bituminous concrete, the pavement, would be handled in the permitting process. But I don't see the gravel in the substitute for the green space as being a requirement.
Well, that's what I was asking about, if I wasn't clear. I wasn't talking about the 2 parking spots. I was talking about using the gravel in substitution of the grass. Is it going to be covered or not?
I've seen a couple examples of where they've talked about a gravel area with applicants while they were going to have drainage going into a gravel area. If the board did have a concern that it wasn't going to be covered, you could have a condition about the gravel being a minimum of 3 inches with the weed protection, since it seems like that's a concern of the board. That could be a pretty standard condition. I don't think that would be too onerous.
Through Mr. Chairman,
I think it's going to be that
just
anyway.
a personal note, on my residence, when I had my driveway reconstructed, I was required to have gravel, and it was a minimum of 3 inches, and it was set in conjunction with the pavement purpose, because I have an area similar to this. And I did inquire with the contractor at the time what was the minimum amount, as I was a little nervous myself. I was going to have 6 to 8 inches of gravel, and it was a minimum of 3 inches, and I got to choose. He actually brought 3 or 4 different gravel samples, so they did a very nice job with the weed block. So to that point, I would make a condition that it would be a minimum of 3 inches.
I know you were talking, and Gary was talking. Go ahead.
Yes, just so there's no mistake, the plan was to have crushed stone, and I think that to me is gravel, but that was her plan to do that, and whether or not it's 3 inches, it probably will be anyway. but just so there's no mistake, that I think that, you know, the materials would be more like a crushed, pressed stone.
I just want something that the weeds aren't gonna go through. That was my main concern. I don't want a mess. You know, I'm trying to make it look very professional, very neat and clean. You know, that's all it is. You know, so I want something that the weeds aren't gonna be popping up and it's gonna look nice.
Okay.
I think we're all saying the same thing, except I think we don't want to refer to the gravel as, we might want to change it to crushed stone as a label. Is it stone dust or is it crushed stone? Do you know?
I think Family Pavement told me crushed pressed stone is what we were talking
Crushed stone.
about. And
That
they
sounds-
lay something down so that the weeds don't grow through.
Perfect.
That's what I was told.
That's all, we're on the same page.
Yeah, the gravel is more of a generic term in my mind, and, but the type is going to be this pressed stone,
Crushed pressed stone.
crushed pressed stone.
So I guess if we're going to talk a condition on the crushed stone, we'll say a minimum of 3 inches, which I think will cover, I think at the end of the day,
That's fine, yes.
we're all talking the same thing.
It's not that much, so I think that's
But
going to be
we'll
fine.
condition that as long as you're okay with that.
Yes, we are.
Yep. Okay. Well, I guess based on everything that's been said tonight, and I think the key thing was you went back and talked to the city and worked out a definitive plan here. I think it's much better than the first time you came in. I know for the board, sitting down with DPD, definitely, you know, as far as we entertain revised petitions means a lot to us, or at least you're willing to work with the city. I think at the end of the day, as far as the special permit that you're going to be granted, if I look at the criteria for it, you obviously are going to meet all of those right now. I don't think I have to run through the 6 different particular aspects of it, but, you know, obviously the adverse effect is better than, won't be as great as if we didn't change it at all. And I think the board recognizes what the parking situation is over there. I don't think this board was looking to try to stifle the petitioner. It's just the first edition really didn't pass muster with the board. But I definitely like this latest rendition. I think all my questions have been asked. I think each of the members have asked their questions. So I fully support it, and I appreciate you working with the city and with the board.
Well, we appreciate the cooperation of the city offices as well as the board.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if I could have a motion, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the matter before us is ZB 2013-21 for a special permit at 246 University Ave. I make a motion to approve with the following condition. The grass area along parking spot number 9 on the site plan shall have crushed grass with a minimum of 3 inches. Crushed stone, correction, crushed stone with a minimum of 3 inches.
Have a second?
Second.
A roll call?
Mr. Hearn,
Approve with condition.
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Belanger,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Perrin.
Approve with condition.
Okay, Ms. Hebert, you've been approved with conditions. Ms. Maloney, wish you the best of luck.
Thank you again.
Joe, are we going to have Ms. Maloney, we're going to sign off on the last set of plans? Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Okay, next matter before us is under new business. This is ZB 2013-26. Petition is a special permit under telecommunications. The applicant is Verizon. The property is located at 131 Tanner Street. The petition to add new antennas for Verizon Wireless to an existing telecommunications tower pursuant to Section 7.6 of the zoning ordinance. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Oh, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and good evening to your other board members. And Joe, thank you for your help in processing our application. My name is Jim Valeriani. I'm a real estate attorney with Verizon Wireless. My office is in Wakefield, Massachusetts. With me tonight is David Tivnan. He's the project coordinator for Verizon Wireless on this application, who's worked with contractors, the owner, and the tower company that manages the facility. That is an existing 110-foot tower that was constructed by SBA Towers, a major national tower company, around 2006 for co-location purposes. It's in the rear of 131 Tanner Street. It's a general industrial district behind an automotive repair and used car sales shop. That entire area of Tanner Street appears to be used for that type of purpose, with a salvage yard and park yard across the street. To the further rear is the connector road, and to the north and south are warehouse and similar type uses. We are seeking to attach our antennas at a 10-foot slot below the highest point of the tower, which is 110 feet, occupied by Sprint PCS. Our antennas would consist of approximately 12 antennas with amplifiers and radio units at the top as well, which are very small boxes that aren't visible to the eye below. Cables would be run down the center of the monopole as they're intended to be, and routed into our 12 by 30 equipment shelter. Inside that equipment shelter are our electronics, switching equipment, transmitters, receivers, battery racks. Also inside of that shelter is an auxiliary generator, which would only operate during prolonged power outage of 8 hours or more. It would cycle once a week just to make sure it's maintained. It's very important to Verizon that they have a generator at all their facilities. Given the setting and given the generator is installed inside the shelter, there'll be no issues with any noise levels, particularly given the type of uses nearby. The engine for the generator is typical to that used in a diesel pickup truck that you would find on the road by any of the numerous car manufacturers. The entire 80 by 50 foot gravel covered fenced compound is vacant other than Sprint's equipment. We would be adding our shelter. In addition, the fuel for the generator would be, in most likelihood, a propane tank, although we're very much outside the clearance for the brook that runs alongside the connector. It would be our preference to use propane or natural gas there. We haven't quite determined which one to tap into. But we could use diesel fuel. We do it quite often, and that's our preference. It's an easier fuel to obtain, and it runs longer, and it's cheaper for us. So in any event, fueling is not a problem. If we do use diesel fuel, it's a double wall tank with a leak detector, and there's a berm system inside the shelter that meets the capacity of the tank if, God forbid, there was a catastrophic leak in the tank. The site is unmanned. It would be visited twice a month by a technician during normal business hours. Antenna maintenance would be very rare, maybe once every year or so, once it's installed. The site fits very nicely for us amongst the other sites we have in the area. This is, at a minimum, our 5th site in the city of Lowell. And it gives us good coverage along the connector as well as that densely populated commercial area. The antennas would look pretty much the same as Sprint's. They have 12 antennas and some radio units at the top of the tower as well. We've included photo simulations. They didn't reach Joe's office till about last week, and I think there may have been a difficulty in printing out those color photo sims, but I do have a couple more that I left this afternoon, and I do have 1 or 2 others as well if you'd like to take a look at those. But they show the same type of installation and very minimal visibility. This is a relatively low height pole. It's the type of height that Verizon would seek in a densely populated area like Lowell. The days of the 200-foot cell tower sites, other than rural areas in northern western New England, are coming to an end. The site's coming down in height to deal with the density of the network. We'll be tapping into existing electric and telephone. There's no water or sewer hookups either. I also submitted earlier today to Joe by email, and I also brought additional copies to put in front of you, just a recap of how we meet I believe all of the requirements for a special permit under your telecommunications bylaw, section 7.6, as well as the general special permit conditions under section 11.3. In fact, the gist of your ordinance on telecommunications facility is to require co-location. We avoid a new tower with this structure. It works for us. It ties in nicely with some of the surrounding sites, which I think you can see by the radio frequency plots that we submitted. The construction would be about a 2-month process. If I may say at this point in time, we are very desirous of trying to activate the site by the end of the year. The carriers, AT&T, Verizon, OmniPoint is merging with Metro PCS, and Sprint are all in a very competitive growth atmosphere right now. There is plenty of room inside that 80 by 50 graveled, fenced compound to meet the co-location needs of all the carriers that exist in this market today. So this is exactly what the pole was designed for. It meets, it's essentially exactly what your ordinance is designed for co-location purposes. It's a very standard, typical Verizon installation. It's the type we would like to do whenever possible. There's no need for any type of screening in this area. It's completely blocked by the buildings and the connector to the west. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. I don't mean to roll through this as if it's, we're permitting, some innocuous use. This is an industrial type use, a utilitarian use. We know it's important, but it really is following suit with how the tower was originally designed and permitted. And I have some photos of the site. I have some overhead photos of the area to show its major industrial type use. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I can honestly say this board's had a few cell tower
I can imagine.
petitions before them, Each one's always an adventure, but, yeah, I know when you mentioned about how many current sites you have in Lowell, did you say it was 4 or 5?
Well, it's at least 5.
Yeah.
The naming convention that the carriers use to identify their cell sites is a little bit quirky. We don't, we could have a site that's on the Tewksbury line and call it, Lowell South. We could have a site that's on the Dracut line and call it Lowell North. So we know we have 5 sites in Lowell right now. It wouldn't surprise me if we have 2 or 3 others. I don't have the answer to that question, but I do show in the RF plots, I think, at least 4 or 5 other sites that are nearby this one. I could easily get that information,
I
Mr.
think,
Chairman.
no, that's okay, because I think this is the first time Verizon's come in to co-locate
On a
on
tower.
a site. I think generally it's been, they've come in to swap out equipment and because of technology, and that's usually what happens with most of the carriers. But, so Sprint is currently on the monopole.
At the top.
Verizon wants to come on.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many actual carriers could be mounted on this monopole?
Well, I would think that, given its height of 110 feet, I mean, your ordinance allows towers up to 199 feet. I would expect that at least the next carrier and maybe even the 4th would be workable from then to mount below at the 87 and 77 foot levels. Right. The pole is in all likelihood designed to be extended another 10 or 20 feet, but this board would have jurisdiction over that extension.
Yep.
And the 97 feet works for us. That's the typical height we're seeking in a setting such as this.
Okay. Yep. I don't really have any other questions at this point. I do appreciate the package you put together. Like I say, we've entertained a few of these before, and but you kind of hit on a lot of the key spots, at least for me, that you showed the site. Obviously, you can take a ride by the site, but you gave us the maps, the coverage maps. Now, that's usually another thing that usually comes up is the coverage. Obviously, if you have existing sites, there must be a need to provide enhanced coverage, I guess I'll call it.
There
And I
is.
think you talked about the connector, so
Yes. I mean, we're operating 4 different sets of frequencies, 800, 700 megahertz, as well as the PCS and advanced wireless services frequencies. AT&T has 4 sets of frequencies. Metro PCS and OmniPoint, with their merger, will have 2 sets of frequencies, and Sprint and Nextel, which have merged into Sprint PCS, has 2 sets of frequencies. So those frequencies really require a finessing of the cell site and where it can go. Some of the antennas are powered down lower, some are powered up higher. They all meet the FCC licensing requirements, but the PCS sites and the AWS sites tend to be closer together. Their signals don't travel as far as the original cellular band from the 80s and 90s.
Yep, okay. Anything else you want to add before I open it up to the public?
No, not right now, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to hope that my letter of today, even though it was last minute, summarizing our compliance is on the record, and the opportunity to respond if there are any other questions.
Sure, appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I'd like to open up to the public. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Opposition. Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open up to the board. Dennis.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple questions, but in general, I think this is a great location. I think that it makes a lot of sense what you're doing in this spot. Co-locating is always a plus, and in this particular location, being in an industrial zone along a major thoroughfare, I think is added bonuses, so a lot of points in your corner there.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to understand the map that you have here. It seems as though the signal by the Verizon installation over off of Middlesex Street and over by UMass Lowell's dorms there is a lot stronger signal than the one you're proposing. Is that correct?
You know, let me grab the RF plot I have, if I may. Just give me one moment, please.
I'm not suggesting that you go to a stronger signal, but I just want to kind of understand the validity for these bars here that you have on the plan and.
On the radio frequency plots?
Yep, right.
Okay, yes. Well, and you know something, it's a combination of, in some instances, coverage, in some instances, capacity. Very densely populated area, and so capacity is always an issue as well. We typically set up the RF plots to show the coverage, and these RF plots are designed to show our new AWS band coverage that we're building out right now in particular. But at some sites, the cellular signal might be covering more than a PCS, or a PCS signal might be covering more than a cellular signal, depending on how they've modified the power. So I'm trying to look at, I mean, we're showing this site right here in the center. I should have used an arrow. Right here is our site that we're proposing.
Right. Yep.
And then we show it tying in nicely with, you know, a little bit of a gap up in here.
Yep.
And I'm not as familiar with the city as I'd like to be. I went to UMass Boston and not UMass Lowell, so forgive me. And then we're showing the standalone coverage. So which site are you thinking is showing some good coverage?
Down by the river? You see the bend in the river there?
Up here?
Yes, exactly, yep.
Okay.
So that one there seems to have a lot of, I'm just looking at it visually, and it seems to have more bars shown in the coverage, is that correct?
This one right here?
Yes.
I think it's, if it's this one in the upper left-hand corner, it seems to be similar. I mean, we want them to be similar. We want these sites to all interact, and we want to avoid situations where one site could be stronger than another. And so in terms of looking at this and trying to explain if one site has got a little bit more power or coverage than another, it could be topography, it could be its height that we don't show on these plots. I really don't have the answer if it's providing more coverage as to why that exactly is. Our RF engineer wasn't able to make it here this evening.
Okay. Just curious. I just want to kind of make sure that we're doing this as few times as possible and
Oh, yes.
what you need. Okay.
Oh, yes.
The other question I had is in regards to the fuel type.
Yes.
That we're approving tonight for your generator.
Yes.
It's propane.
What we're asking for is the flexibility. We believe we're going to end up using propane. That's a 500-gallon tank, and it would meet the 10-foot clearances from combustible and ignitable sources, and that's a fire that's a fire department permit we would need. Even with placing that in place, it wouldn't interfere with any future co-location, even with the 10-foot radius setback. We typically use diesel. As you can imagine, there's a lot of automobile salvage use there. So there's a concern by a company like Verizon that, God forbid, if ever there's any type of a spill, they could find themselves under the strict liability provisions of the CERCLA statute. So if this were a pristine site and not near a sensitive wetland area, we'd use diesel. Given the brook is over 100 feet distant, we'd prefer to do propane. If we can hook up to natural gas, that would be our first choice. So we're asking for the flexibility. We're asking that the board maybe include as a finding that the flexibility to put in a propane tank is allowable for us, even though I wasn't able to show it on the plans, okay? Because we may end up hooking into natural gas at the site too. There's some easement issues with the gas company that we don't know if we're gonna be able to resolve.
The angle that I was more thinking of is the clean fuel, and the natural gas or propane to me are clean fuels, and the diesel was not there for me. So are we looking at propane approval with the flexibility of going to natural gas? Is that what you're saying?
What we would seek to do here is propane or natural gas. If we can't do either one of those due to limitations with the gas company or with the tower company, which is not going to be a problem with us, then we would seek to do diesel. Those are the only three options. Diesel is the last alternative.
Okay.
So in all likelihood, it's going to be propane or natural gas.
Okay. I think
Okay.
with the stipulation that diesel being the last alternative, maybe that does make sense.
Okay, if that's something you want to.
I do
that's
want to
something you wanna
concern
put in
that
the
we
findings.
try to use clean fuels whenever
Yes.
possible, so, okay.
Very good.
No further questions. Thank you very much. Good proposal.
Thank you, Dennis. Kevin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think Dennis stole all the thunder really that was out there, other than the fact that I just want to reiterate that these are the sites, that there's a tower there already. I think it makes all the sense in the world to utilize that space. It's an industrial space, so it makes it easy on us to review that and understand what you're trying to do. So other than that, I support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the petitioner for a very well-produced package. It's always nice to get that information. Those coverage maps, getting them a week earlier was very helpful to me. I had some similar questions by my colleague. I think it's a perfect site. I do appreciate all the information. You actually answered a couple of the questions that I had in your dissertation, and the reduction of towers in this industry, I think, is going to be welcomed everywhere. And I think the use of natural gas to propane and diesel as a final option is what this board is always looking for, the reduction of safe fuels. So I do appreciate that. I
Thank
support
you.
your motion.
But I can't take credit where it's not due. Joe made sure he prodded me to say that your board certainly wants to see the RF plots and the photo simulation. So I was able to get them to Joe quickly enough to get in. We would have had them, but he mentioned you like to have them ahead of time.
Well, I will say that the board does appreciate the work that Joe does for every meeting and prepares us very well, and that does not go unnoticed. So thank you for bringing
Very
that
good.
up as well.
Thank you, Gary. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement with my colleagues. This package is a very detailed package, so I thank you for that. I did have a quick question, and maybe you already said it through your comments, and I didn't hear it. But you would be the second carrier to have an antenna on that moon pole. I'm just curious, how many carriers could go on that pole?
It's designed for 4.
Okay, so 4 would be the max.
4 would be the max for the existing structure that's there. Very typically, and I don't know if this is the case, a low-height pole such as that is designed with a flange at the top to allow another 10-foot section. Say another carrier comes into the market. Say Google gets an FCC license to open up their own network or something like that, God forbid. And they needed this site. There might be an opportunity to extend the height so long as the pole is structurally satisfactory and the board were to approve it. So I wouldn't envision this pole getting any higher for some time to come until the other two carriers come along and use the additional slots.
Yeah, that's the only question I had. So, anytime you could use an existing cell tower instead of making a new one, I think that's great. So
Very good.
I support this. So,
Very good.
so thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I have just two things to talk about. And I know you mentioned it in your write-up, was the equipment that's going on there. As far as the color, now I believe you put in there, you're going to try to match. Is it going to be the exact same match as the Sprint, or, I mean?
Well, it's hard for me to tell with the photo simulations whether the antennas typically come in a lighter gray and the pole is a darker gray.
Right.
And it appears that Sprint's antennas are a lighter gray, and that's what we've shown our antennas to be. We could paint ours darker. We have no ability to influence Sprint. I would say that as long as it's that grayish color, which the industry seems to think blends in the best with the sky background, I don't know what else we could do.
Well, I don't, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever really had an issue with equipment colors per se. They seem to be kind of, I'll call it standard.
Well, and certainly in a sensitive area.
I just want to make sure, you're not putting something up there that's like orange that all of a sudden stands out, you know what I mean? I'm assuming, but I don't know that much about the equipment.
No, you're
Is
right.
the
No,
equipment pretty much in light gray? Is that standard industry?
It is, pretty
Practice,
much.
you know what I mean?
They are gray colors.
Okay. So I don't think I'm going to condition that. I'm going to, take the package as submitted, that's what it's going to be, as close to the light gray as possible.
And your ordinance requires that as well.
Okay, the other thing that, the discussion you had with Dennis on diesel and gas and propane. Joe, I don't think I've ever heard that discussed in any of the presentations we've had. Now, all the city departments, they go through the application?
Yes.
I know we didn't receive anything. So this change, if they did propane instead of diesel, or, I'll just throw it out, does the fire department need to do another review? Do we need to condition a review? I'm just saying the fire department, but.
Yeah, I mean, if a propane tank was going to be installed, the applicant would have to get a permit through the fire department, through the hazmat section of the fire department. So
Do you
they
know
would
offhand if we have any propane that's being used by any of our existing sites?
I'm not sure off the top
I
of my
don't
head.
recall us even talking
Yeah.
about that. Or
Typically at a
Or a
tower
petitioner
site.
coming in and saying, oh, by the way, I might go with propane instead of diesel.
Yeah. It's typically at a tower site.
all right.
If it were on a city building, it would probably be natural gas.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd like to condition just that, depending on which type of source that you're going to use, that at least we have the fire department or any other city departments just re-review that. That's why I just wanted to throw it out there.
Whichever department has jurisdiction, certainly.
Yeah.
Very good.
I just want to make sure we're not,
Okay.
we approve something, and all of a sudden somebody comes back and says, why didn't you ask it? So
Okay.
as long as that's okay with you, I'm going to condition just that. I'm sure it's fine, but
Right, that we just seek whatever the appropriate review is from whatever applicable
yeah,
department.
whatever
We
permitted.
certainly will.
yep. Well, I think, again, I'll be short with this. I appreciate the package. I appreciate your presentation. I think you answered all the questions that we had. I know we've had success with Verizon in there before. So you're in here for the special permit for telecommunications. I believe you've met all the requirements for that as it pertains to section 7.6. So with the one condition, if I could have a motion, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the matter before us is ZB 2013-26. For a special permit of 131 Tanner Street, I make a motion to approve with the following condition. The appropriate city departments review and permit the use of any propane for the generator on site.
Any applicable
Just,
permit.
it's not just the propane. He's got 3 different options here.
So you want it for all three?
So we'll call it what? Source of, is it a
Source of fuel.
Source of fuel.
Fuel
is
source
natural-
is permitted by the applicable
Yep.
department.
The source of fuel for natural gas, propane, and/or diesel, and diesel to be the final option on this site.
Okay. We have a second?
Second motion.
Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Ahern,
Approved with condition.
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approved with condition.
Mr. Peck,
Approve the conditions.
Mr. Perrin.
Approve with condition.
Okay, so is it Valeriani?
Valeriani,
Yeah, that was close, right?
yes, you were. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and
Thank you all.
wish Verizon good luck with the project.
Thanks very much. And Mr. Chairman, if I may inquire, or perhaps through Joe, as I said, we would like to get this site built by the end of the year, and, you know, the building inspector can take up to 30 days, certainly, and you've certainly still got quite some time before you have to write a decision, and
Yep.
could I get a sense for how long a decision might take to get written and signed and filed?
Well, we have rules for that, so Joe, you can explain that to the petitioner.
I could call you tomorrow, Joe, if you'd like, if that's preferable.
Sure. We have up to 2 weeks to file a decision letter with the city clerk, followed by the 20-day appeal period. Typically, we usually get at least a draft out within a couple days.
Okay.
We get it to the board for their review, and so long as everybody's comfortable with it, we usually get a response back saying they're fine with it, then we file it down in the clerk's office.
Fantastic. Okay. Very, very good. Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have a good evening. Okay, since we have no minutes
Would you like me
to
to?
review and vote on, any other matters anybody wants to bring up? And if I can wait for Joe.
Thanks for everything you've done, too. That's fine, it's just Verizon, it's just, they're the Darth Vader phone company. They really like to push, push, push. Thank you. All righty, thanks again.
Joe, next meeting,
Next meeting is September 9th.
September 9th. Okay. Okay, if there's no other matters before us, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second?
Second.
So moved. Good night.